With that all done, let's let the audience in the theater and the folks who are at home know who you are and what your line really is.
Arnold Palmer ushered golf into the modern era, giving players the blueprints to make a living and become known for more than just their play. His name graces a drink, clothing lines, an airport, hospitals, car dealerships. There are 300 plus Arnold Palmer designed golf courses, but if he hadn't taken a certain flight in 1960, one of golf's most legendary championships would be just a blip on the radar of American golfers. Arnold Palmer had an incredible start to 1960. In April, he won the Masters wire to wire, birdieing the final 2 holes to win by 1 stroke. 2 months later, he erased a 7-hole deficit to pull off the greatest comeback in US Open history. Along with the 2 majors, he had 4 other tournament victories on the year. And then he decided to do the unthinkable. Arnold Palmer was going to play in the Open Championship, or the British Open for us Yanks. Now a must-play tournament for professional golfers, back in the 50s, American pros were avoiding it for more reasons than just the unpredictable weather. While Mother Nature would often make it rain, the tournament organizers would not. In 1959, Gary Player won and took home 1,000 pounds, roughly 2,800 American dollars at the time. This paled in comparison with the purse of American tournaments. The PGA Championship, US Open, and Masters had been well past this mark since the 1940s, and non-major competitions in the States were also routinely awarding more than $5,000 to their winners. To make matters worse, if an American were to take part in the British Open, they'd be there at least 2 weeks for practice, qualifying rounds, and then the tournament itself. This meant they'd miss the chance to play in multiple tournaments with greater payouts scheduled around the same time in the US. If they did decide to travel for it, there was no guarantee they'd even play in the tournament, as every single person still had to play a qualifying round to get into the Open. Finally, if after all that they managed to win, $1,000 of that prize money would go towards their travel and lodging. Since they had a better chance to lose money in the process, you can't really blame American golfers for dodging it. But for Palmer, despite all of that, he still headed to Britain. Now, Arnie was the money leader on the year, having won over $30,000 between the Masters and US Open alone, so he wasn't sweating the finances. He also was selected to represent the US in the Canada Cup, which was played in Dublin a few weeks prior to the Open, so he'd already be across the pond. Most importantly though, he knew the golfer that he wanted to become. Bobby Jones completed a Grand Slam in 1930, winning the Open Championship, the Amateur Championship, the US Open, and the US Amateur. Palmer wanted to be on that level, and also recognized what no other golfer did: the power of marketing. See, Palmer was kind of the James Dean of golf. He did things differently, he played his own way, he looked great in a pair of slacks, and on his flight to Britain, he had a conversation that would change golf history. Chatting with sports writer Bob Drum, the topic shifted to Bobby Jones. Drum said that Palmer had a chance to have a year more impressive than what Jones did back in 1930. But the concept of winning a Grand Slam had ended, partially thanks to the game growing and more tournaments sprouting up. Palmer responded, "Why don't we create a new Grand Slam?" Having already won the Masters and US Open, if he finished the year with 2 more major victories, why couldn't that be a Grand Slam? Drum bought in, spreading the idea to his peers, and as Palmer teed off at a tournament Americans had previously ignored, record numbers tuned in to witness a new era. It was exactly what the Open needed to regain its illustrious status and bring back top competition from overseas. But Palmer didn't have to go. Hell, he didn't even pull off the Grand Slam that he invented. He very easily could have stayed stateside, and if he had, shaped golf on a global scale in a different way. For starters, there were plenty of other tournaments gaining notoriety. With Palmer's help, one of those could have become a major, because at the time there really wasn't much in the way of an official list. It wasn't until Arnie declared what made up a Grand Slam, so who's to say another storied tournament couldn't take its place? Take the Western Open, for instance. Established in 1899, it was older than the Masters and took place within a week of the British Open in 1960. Palmer went on to win it in 1961 and 63, so it would have been advantageous for him as a marketer to elevate the Western. It was far more friendly when it came to travel and was more generous in its payouts, so the rest of the top talent wouldn't have to be convinced to battle it out here. Granted, this would have had disastrous effects for British golf. Obviously, the Open would suffer as the big names would continue to avoid it, but the individual golfers in the UK would also continue to struggle. Because tournament payouts were lower, professional golfers were usually forced to keep day jobs. Up until 1966, the Open was played from Wednesday to Friday, just to free up the weekend for the golf pros to work in the shops at the course. Because hey, folks aren't supposed to get rich and famous off of golf. With this change, we do have to do some quick rewriting of history though. If the Western replaced the British, we'd miss out on Jack Nicklaus's 1970 Open Championship playoff victory. Everyone's creepy Uncle John Daly would lose one of his 2 majors. Hell, we'd even have to give a facelift to 1970 through 1983 when all but 2 British Opens were won by an American. The man most affected by this would be Tom Watson, who won 5 of his 8 majors at the British Open. Thankfully for all of us, Arnold Palmer knew what he was doing. He put the sport on his shoulders and injected life back into the British Open. This led Americans to return and raised the competition level of international play, which also led to bigger payouts. So while Arnie did all he could to make sure his name would never die, he did even more for the entire sport of golf. Once at the Western Open during the 70s, 5 golfers were struck by lightning, including Lee Trevino. So that's pretty cool. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to SB Nation for more and comment down below.